Hey everyone, my name is Wedge and welcome back to our Best of the Rest series where we show you most of the rest of the Battle for Zendikar spoilers that weren't released individually. In this video, we'll be taking a look at blue cards. I hope you enjoy, and if you do, there's a little thumbs up button right down there. Looks like it could use some love. Let's do this. Adverse Conditions is 4 mana for an instant with Devoid. Tap up to 2 target creatures. Those creatures don't untap during their controller's next untap step. Put a 1/1 Eldrazi Scion token onto the battlefield. This card is awkward. I would like it much more if it put 2 tokens into play, but we can't always have everything we want, now can we? I'm not partial to the effect at this cost, mainly because keeping up the mana to use it is bothersome. If you're playing a super slow deck, then maybe, but part of me wants you to just have another threat, you know? Brilliant Spectrum is 4 mana for a sorcery with Converge. Draw X cards, where X is the number of colors of mana spent to cast it, and then discard 2 cards. As I mentioned in a previous video, Converge is a mechanic you basically have to build around for it to be truly impactful. With the Spectrum, it can be good, but you'll need to pay 4 different colors of mana every time to make it truly worth it. I know that's going deep, but if you play these Converge spells, you better be ready to taste the rainbow. Cloud Manta is 4 mana for a 3/2 fish with flying. Yep, it's a simple card. It flies, it has 3 power, it's a good card for a blue deck, draft it mid-pack, let's move on. Clutch of Currents is 1 blue mana for a sorcery. Return target creature to its owner's hand. It also has Awaken 3 for 5 mana. This card is crazy. Easily one of the best blue commons. The 1 mana unsummon effect is nice, but where it really shines, that Awaken mechanic. If you can use this with Awaken, you return their biggest creature to their hand and you get a 3/3. The tempo you just gained is unreal. Seriously, it's unreal. As far as commons go, this is one of the best early pick commons. Never underestimate unsummon effects, especially ones with upside like this. Coral Helm Guide is 2 mana for a 2/1 Merfolk Scout ally. You can pay 5 mana and target creature can't be blocked this turn. It's the definition of a filler creature. You aren't super happy to play her, but you will if you need to. She fills in the lower part of a curve nicely, and that ability could be relevant late game when you have nowhere else to dump your mana. Unblockable always was an unfun mechanic, no different here. Cryptic Cruiser is 4 mana for a 3/3 Eldrazi Processor with Devoid. You can pay 3 mana and put a card an opponent owns from exile into that player's graveyard to tap target creature. Alright, there are plenty of ways to use your opponent's exiled cards, and this is easily one of the more lackluster ones. 4 mana for a 3/3 colorless creature is still decent, so it might be an okay filler card, but that ability isn't what you want to be doing with exiled cards. Try not to use it if you don't have to, but again, if you need a curve filler, he's a dude. Eldrazi Sky Spawner is 3 mana for a 2/1 Eldrazi Drone with flying and Devoid. When it enters the battlefield, put a 1/1 Scion token onto the battlefield. Everyone, say hello to the best blue common in the set. I am not joking. 3 mana for a 2/1 Flyer and a 1/1 Ramper. This is like Sandstep Outcast / Gyroper Gearcrafter all over again, but better because the spawner itself flies. Remember, efficient flyers aren't common in this format. The spawner is the definition of an efficient flyer. Take all of these, all of them. Halimar Tidecaller is 3 mana for a 2/3 human wizard ally. When it enters the battlefield, you may return target card with Awaken from your graveyard to the battlefield. Land creatures you control have flying. This card's hilarious. It's obviously great in a deck with Clutch the Currents or something like Royal Spout. Instead of being in an ally deck, this is more likely to be in more of a control strategy. Basically, you're looking to play this in the same shell as our new Azorius Merfolk Overlord. Keep that in mind, this card is not for the ally deck, it's for the Blue-White Awakened deck, and in there, super good. Oracle of Dust is 5 mana for a 3/5 Eldrazi Processor with Devoid. You can pay 2 mana and put a card an opponent owns from exile in their graveyard to draw a card, then discard a card. The only reason I really like this is because it has 5 toughness. Most creatures in the format aren't going to be able to get past it. It will take something even bigger, which is rare. The problem is the ability is kind of and the cost is a bit high, but that's just nitpicking. I think it's a fine 22nd, 23rd card. Ruination Guide is 3 mana for a 3/2 Eldrazi Drone with Devoid, Ingest, and other colorless creatures you control get +1/+0. Alright, this card is bonkers. Absolutely disgustingly bonkers. Could be the best blue uncommon. Ingest is great, a 3/2 for 3 is just fine, and a Power Anthem effect for your Eldrazi Scions? Yes, please. Turning all of your little 1/1s into 2/1s, that's game-changing. One Ruination Guide can double the power on your board. Amazing card, definitely first pickable in a lot of situations. Rush of Ice is 1 blue mana for a sorcery. Tap target creature, it doesn't untap during its controller's next untap step. It also has Awaken 3 for 5 mana. Rush of Ice would just be okay without Awaken, but with Awaken, good card. Not something you want to first pick or anything like that, but a solid addition as a one-of. Awaken gives it late game value while time walking one of their biggest threats. Being able to control the tempo of the game like that, yes please, good card. Salvage Drone is 1 blue mana for a 1/1 Eldrazi drone with Devoid and Jest, and when it dies you may draw a card. If you do, discard a card. I wasn't going to mention it, but I think it's important to tell you that you probably shouldn't play this. Unless you 100% absolutely definitely need Ingest all the time ever, replacing this with anything else is going to be better most of the time. Not that the abilities aren't useful. They can be, but 1-drops in this format are overall. Spell Shrivel is 3 mana for an instant with Devoid. Counter target spell unless its controller pays 4. If that spell is countered this way, exile it instead of putting it into its owner's graveyard. Spell Shrivel is an alright card as long as it's in the right deck. Make sure you only play this when you have a reactive strategy. If your deck is full of creatures and you have a good curve, that means you want to be proactive. This card, not proactive. This belongs in the slow, grindy blue-white or blue-black decks. In there is perfectly fine. Anywhere else, bit awkward. Tide Drifter is 2 mana for a 0/5 Eldrazi drone with Devoid. Other colorless creatures you control get +0/+1. Well, here's the toughness version of our friend the Ruination Guide. While obviously not as impactful, turning your 1/1s into 1/2s isn't so bad. Again, it won't do as much as the guide, but it's certainly playable. It doesn't hurt that the card is a giant wall in and of itself. I wouldn't consider first picking this, but you might be able to sneak it mid to late pick. Tightening Coils is 2 mana for an enchant creature aura. Enchanted creature gets -6/-0 and loses flying. The fixed pin to the earth is, believe it or not, a top 5 common in blue. It's basically a removal spell for attackers. It drags them to the ground and destroys any chance of them attacking. If that isn't removal, I don't know what is, especially on a creature you can't deal with for only 2 mana. It may not seem like a card you would usually play, but if you can get a couple of these, you'll see how good they really are. Ulamog's Reclaimer is 5 mana for a 2/5 Eldrazi processor with Devoid. When it enters the battlefield, you may put a card an opponent owns from exile into their graveyard. If you do, return target instant or sorcery card from your graveyard to your hand. Another one of the best blue uncommons. This is the kind of effect you want when you return exiled cards. The value is crazy here. Play something like Clutch of Currents, then get it back so dirty. Recursion's always powerful, especially when you get it on the cheap. Here, you get it and a 2/5 body. In a deck with Ingest, this card's an all-star, definitely worth taking early. Wavewing Elemental is 6 mana for a 3/4 Elemental with flying and landfall. When it triggers, it gets +2/+2 until end of turn. On a scale of best flying creatures in the set to worst flying creatures in the set, the Elemental is pretty close to the middle. It isn't the most exciting card, but if you're looking for a little more top-end help, it'll do its job. It is 6 mana, but if you drop a land on turn 7, you're looking at 5 power in the air. It's a fast clock. Worst case, it eats a removal spell, or you use it to block your opponent's flyers. It's a decent filler card. Windrider Patrol is 5 mana for a 4/3 Merfolk Wizard with flying. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, scry 2. It's broken. 5 mana for 4 power in the air, yes. Every time this card was played this past weekend, it dominated. Real difficult to fight someone when they get to scry 2 every turn while you take 4 to the face. Easily first pickable. Best blue uncommon for sure. It's an amazing card. And that'll do it for the rest of the blue cards in Battle for Zendikar that I felt like talking about. Let me know in the comments how you feel about blue in the set. Do you want to draft it? Does it seem strong? How uncomfortable is that creature in the art? Just all important questions. As always, subscribe for the latest and most reliable Battle for Zendikar spoiler information you could ever need. This is the Manosaurus. I'm Wedge. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.
Wow.